Art is a powerful medium of communication. It allows us to peek into the soul, the emotions, the thoughts and consciousness of an artist. It connects us to a reality outside the physical realm. It moves us, speaks to us. It connects us further to every human being, to all life around us on this earth. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Earthvism Virtual Exhibit. I'm Nazreen Castro, the branch manager of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. Thank you for joining us tonight as we showcase visual works of art and to sit down and talk with the artists to get to know them and gain insight about their visual pieces. For this exhibit, we have partnered with Agam Agenda, which is a dynamic, shape-shifting platform for creative, transdisciplinary collaboration across writers, artists, scientists, youth, and campaigners who reimagine climate conversations through stories and art. We are holding this exhibit as part of our week-long celebration of this year's Earth Day, with the theme of a resilient and sustainable planet, celebrating the Earth we envision to live in. Through this celebration, we aim to foster a sense of hope and spur of action from everyone to pave the way for the Earth that we want and envision to live in. Tonight, I am excited to be joined by climate reality leader Padma Perez, who is the project lead of Agam Agenda. Padma is an anthropologist by training and a writer by heart, and her poems and essays have been anthologized in various Philippine publications. Good evening, Padma. What an exciting night we have.
Thanks, and good evening to Naz. Yes, we have an exciting night ahead in this Earthvism Virtual Exhibit. We're going to see visual works of art and meet the artists that created them. But before that, on behalf of Agam Agenda, I want to express our appreciation to the Climate Reality Project Philippines for always providing meaningful spaces for artists to feature their stories and art and engage with climate action. So thank you for this partnership and this wonderful opportunity to work with all of you. We deepen this year's celebration of Earth Day by highlighting how creative skills, talents, and the medium of art can convey powerful messages and raise stronger calls for caring for our one true home, the Earth. Tama ka, Naz. Art, in its many forms, can connect us to all life around us on a personal or even spiritual level. And the artists joining us tonight are wonderful examples of this. I can't wait for everyone to meet them and see their featured artworks, so let's get started. Hi, Aliana. Thank you for joining us and all our viewers and listeners this night for the Earthvism Virtual Exhibit. And thank you for the beautiful sculpture that you shared with us for this evening. But before we talk about your piece, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for having me here. I'm Aliana. I'm a climate reality leader. And what I do now is I am involved in mostly gender lens work. So for my climate work, I do give importance to like understanding and forwarding the intersection of women's issues and climate issues, because I do believe that addressing these issues will address our climate crisis. I have a small business. It's called the Kitchen Sink. I have bath and body products for personal care that are eco-friendly, and they also have a social component where our profits go to Chameleon Association. This is a shelter that provides a holistic development for women who are victims of sexual abuse. Yeah. So basically, that's what I do now.
Great. So you're really immersed in gender issues and really working for women's rights in
Yes.
different ways, right? So in the
Yes.
business sector, but also in your advocacy,
Yeah.
and you managed to tie that in with climate. So
Mm.
it makes sense to me that the sculpture that you've shared with us for this Earth Day is the sculpture of a woman, and the title is Lady in Flight. Could you tell us a little bit about this piece?
Yes, absolutely. This is actually part of a four-piece collection. And on the technical side, these are metal sculptures made from upcycled materials, from junkyards. But the essence of this four-piece material is the relationship between the land, the sea, the air, and humans with respect to climate. And then of course, since I am in the genderland side of things, I chose a woman to represent humanity and how we should actually work as a system or with living organisms. What I mean by this is, so that it's a little bit more clear, is that we can't exist without the others, and we are part of collective whole. So, yeah.
Right. So, Lady in Flight. What's happening around you when you're working on a piece like this? What are you hearing, seeing, smelling?
This is quite a difficult question, because when I'm usually working, I get into a state of, let's say, quote unquote flow, where I don't really notice what's in my surroundings, and I just focus on the work. And I guess it's like I'm in a different space altogether, let's say. Like, for example, when I was doing this, I was in a very hot, of course, hot and filthy shop, because, metalworks, we need fire and all these equipment that's naturally dirty. But I don't notice it, and I only notice like what the material is transforming into. Yeah, there.
That's beautifully described. Actually, even if you felt it was a difficult question, I'm trying to imagine what it's like to be surrounded by heat and fire, and I guess it's grimy as well. And
It is very grimy, yeah.
yeah. But to not notice any of that and only be focused on what you're working on. So I'm curious, could you tell us a little more about the work that goes into it? So are you welding, or are you hammering things? Do you have to melt stuff or cut stuff? How do you do this?
It involves all of the things you mentioned. So it's welding. We use torches, blow torches, to melt the metal and melt it together. We also do hammering when you want to achieve a certain form, for example. Bending is also involved. We also use metal saws. Like, it can be manual or electrical saw to cut the pieces into the right shape or the right size. So it's all of those things that you mentioned. Locally, the process is very manual, I would say, meaning like you have to DIY a lot of things. Like, for example, if I want to bend something, I have to look for, let's say, a table that can withstand pressure, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and it sounds fun to get to play with fire and melt hard metals.
Yes, it's very, very fun.
It strikes me also as another level of thinking about how we're connected to everything, which is something you said earlier, that we can't live or exist without the other, and it feels like that process of making you just described um, also relates to our needing these things that are around us.
Yes, definitely. I would say that, at least for my process when I'm working, I can't just enter with my own ideas. I do have a concept to begin with, but I do allow the material to guide me through the process. Like, what does it want to be, or how does it want to be formed or shaped? So sometimes there are also some instances when I start with an idea, but I end up with a totally different thing because the material just doesn't want to be that thing.
And do you experience that in your climate work as well, by any chance?
I'm at work. Yeah. Recently, this is completely not related, but recently, like, I was with a team, working with a team, developing a program for adolescent girls so that we can take them out of exploitation. And then the program design completely changed from what we were starting with, because when we did the research and talked to the demographic, we realized that our assumptions were not fit to what they need. Yeah. It's a very interesting process of iteration, let's say, and adaptation.
Yeah, great. That's so interesting. And looking now at Lady in Flight and her form and the material, and knowing the process of creation that went into this, I want to ask you, what did you draw on while you were creating Lady in Flight? Memories, maybe, or images, ideas, or internal resources that helped you create this piece?
This piece is actually very funny. Since I'm female, I was actually using myself as a reference when I was making it. So, like, it's very manual, let's say. Like, for example, like, I would copy her pose and look at myself while I'm doing it, and then try to, like, put it into form. So I hope that answers your question. Yep, it started with a really bad sketch, let's say, like, just lines and with no real form. But yeah, eventually it came together. Yeah.
Nice. So you yourself are a resource also in this, being a woman. Great. Hi, Jekka. Thank you for joining us this evening. And we're also joined by other Pinoy climate reality leaders for this Earthvism Virtual Art Exhibit. And thank you for the artwork that you've given us.
It's my pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Angelica Clamor, but I go as Jekka. I'm currently a second-year advertising art student at the University of Santo Tomas College of Fine Arts and Design. And yeah, I just really love art, and ever since I was a child, I think that's the road I was really meant to go down. You know.
Nice. And your painting, is it Celeste or Celeste?
Celeste.
Okay, and what were you sensing or feeling when you painted her? I feel like saying her because of the very strong young woman at the center of the painting.
So, my train of thought when I was doing this artwork was to make a depiction of Mother Earth or Mother Nature. Uh, the message I actually wanted to convey to this with this artwork was Mother Nature reflects like her surroundings. So as you can see in the painting, it's like more on clear skies, and like you can see the stars, and the clouds are it's like clean air. So with that, Mother Nature is also like at her best self also when her surroundings are clean and clear. So yeah, that was my intention with this artwork.
I like the fact that she looks so young in your painting. It's not a typical portrayal of Mother Nature.
Yes, I guess I also kind of like wanted to emphasize na since like my generation's role in the climate action. So I wanted to like picture myself also as her. So like that was my yeah.
We could all be Mother Nature.
Yes.
I like that. So you talked about everybody having a role, and also reflecting on how you could be her. Anybody could be her. But speaking of your work and your love for the arts, do you think there's a role for the arts in the climate crisis? There's so much discussion around this, right? And many people say, of course there is, but many people are also unsure of what's the use, and should art even have a use? But let's not go into that debate. So just that question, do you think there's a role for arts in the climate crisis?
Yes, of course. I think art has a role in everything. We just don't realize it or appreciate it enough. That's why actually even today there are still like many artists struggling in the industry because of the lack of appreciation and the lack of people think that there's no use for it in the industry. So yeah, I think I'm strongly against that belief that art doesn't have a use.
I really like how you put it. Art has a role in everything, and that's so important for us to realize, right? Personally, I've been so focused on, does art have a role in the climate crisis? But you just made me widen that horizon. So thank you for pointing that out. But what is the role of art in the climate crisis?
As I see it, for me, the main role of art is for awareness, like so that we can visually translate the climate crisis into a more pleasing, not really pleasing, but more attractive piece, so that um, people who like the regular or the mass will be able to catch the masses' attention using our art about the climate crisis.
Thank you, Jekka. I almost called you Celeste.
Oh my gosh.
But it's because you have the same hair.
Yeah.
So, with what you said, I think we can look forward to seeing more of your work in the work we do for climate action. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Riel. How are you?
Fine, thank you at the moment.
It's good to have you with us this evening. So, introduce yourself to all our listeners and our audience today.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rtn Diana. I am an architecture graduate from UP Diliman. For Climate Reality PH, I am also a member of the creative team and the youth cluster. For Climate Reality, I've held I've submitted artworks for the Artivism feature for the past few months, and I've also last year I've talked about I've held talks about about green architecture and and our built heritage, which also connects to my other advocacy, which is heritage conservation. So that's what I'm also trying to advocate, the connection of green architecture and our built heritage. For as a visual artist, I usually do it as a hobby. Though just recently I've been working as a freelance graphic designer. And I usually work with a lot of mediums. Some people know me for my sketches, some people know me for my doodles, some people know me a lot for my origami, which I've been holding workshops. I have a workshop this Saturday. Though I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in any of them. I just like doing them.
But that's nice. No, often it's the things that we do with our hands that give us joy. You mentioned heritage conservation, and I noticed there's the painting that's behind you. Could you tell us a little about it?
So I've been part of the heritage conservation advocacy as well for as long as I could remember as an elementary student.
Wow.
We would try to bring awareness as well in when it comes to well, I started out trying to share awareness with our heritage structures, especially the ones being endangered and the ones we've lost, especially during the World War. Later on in the advocacy, I've also worked with different organizations in helping in saving some endangered structures. Like for example, a couple of years ago, we wrote some letters to have a to have the NHCP or NCCAC issue a cease and desist order against the demolition of two heritage structures in Escolta, which I think is a really big uh, step forward.
That's
And as and along with the issue, with climate justice, I also do a lot of artworks that connect to advocacy as well. Like for example, this artwork behind me, um, it's for the advocacy of the San Sebastian of the conservation of the San Sebastian Church, especially just recently when there's this high-rise building that's endangering the structure, that's the proposed high-rise structure that's going to be built near the rear of the church.
Thank you, Riel. Very important work also. And I can see that the style and the medium that you used for your San Sebastian work is very different from the one we're looking at now, which you've entitled The Tree of Life. Am I right?
I think it was the earthly tree, but
The Earthly
yeah.
Tree, right? So, which you've entitled The Earthly Tree. So, what did you use to make this work of art?
It's a pixel artwork. People also usually refer to it as 8-bit, though it's quite erroneous, so I usually use the term pixel art. I just started doing this pixel art um, medium last year, and it was um, it was something I developed as well throughout the pandemic. It was a new thing to do with my artworks, and that's what I did as well here with my submission for the Artivism. Since I think the what's nice about 8-bit, about pixel art is that it kind of reminisces us with our childhood, since we can usually associate it with video games, with playful visuals, etc. And I think it's also nice to incorporate this type of this medium of or style of artwork, since I think it's nice to view the environment in the eyes of a child, since that a child usually looks at their environment with curiosity, with wonder, innocence, like what is this part of the environment? What can we do about this? Is it what can I do for it? I think that's one thing that we can that's one thing on why I use um, the style of pixel art for works like this one.
Nice. And while you were doing it, so this is a digital artwork, right? And while you were doing it, what was happening around you? What were you sensing? What were you feeling? What could you see or hear or smell?
I I think I'm a visual type of person, so if I try to do an artwork, I usually imagine it first in my head and I would try to replicate it in the canvas. If if some elements work together, then I would push through with that concept. If it wouldn't, I would make some changes. And I would also try to translate different meanings to different elements as well, visual elements. And I would try to incorporate that as well in the artwork. Like, for example, in the Earthly Tree artwork that I did, I thought of how there's this variety of organisms living on the earth, different different animals, people, and plants. And I wanted to signify that as well in my artwork. So I thought of making the leaves of the tree different colors. So to signify variety in the organisms that benefit from the earth.
Nice. It's nice that you were I imagine you were in your room facing a screen, but your thoughts and what you were seeing behind your eyes were different life forms around us. I like that. So, Riel, what do you how does art um, help you? What does art do for you to give you hope and strength, not just in your climate work, but in this time that we're in now? I mean, everybody is struggling one way or another with the pandemic. How does art give you hope and strength?
Art for me, and as well as a lot of other people, whether it's the artist or the viewer, art is a coping mechanism that helps us get through each day during this pandemic, during these hard times. But other than being a coping mechanism, I think what's nice about art is that it's also a medium to deliver a statement or our advocacies in creative ways. Creative ways that could catch the eye of different people, not necessarily um, a large crowd or something, but I think to deliver your message to a group of people is already quite a big step in the advocacy. And I think it's these little victories that still should be celebrated. That you get to you get to bring your message out there, and some people get to appreciate their work. Some people get to, though artists, of course, the beauty of art is that not it's not necessarily your message that gets to them, but the fact that some people get to view your work and they develop their own meanings from it, and hopefully it's a positive, it's aligned with what we want, though there of course there's a chance that it is. And I think that's a step as well towards the awareness part of our advocacy.
Speaking of messages, like you said, no, you can't really dictate as the artist what message viewers will take when they see your artwork. But did you have a message in mind when you created the Earthly Tree?
I think the message I had in mind when I did the artwork is that it's um it's to bring a sense of wonder to the advocacy. Like, it's a splash of color. It's a different way to look at things in a playful way. And I if I were to give a statement, a specific statement, in if I had one in mind during while doing this artwork, I wouldn't say I had one statement in mind. I would just rather it's just that what how can I integrate the environment in my artwork? How can I capture the eyes of people that they may this can be some sort of a point of discussion or a creative means or just a coping mechanism for people to look at, or if they could get a message that could be related to in the environment. And I think that's also the reason why I used a lot of environment related elements like the tree, which um, uh, I think is usually associated with the environment and protecting environment, which, and at this point, um, there have been a lot of issues with tree cutting in the in different cities, like in Bacolod or something. So that's what that's what I had in mind. So how could, that's also another thing that inspires me while I do my artwork. How could I relate what I do to current events? So there's that.
Thanks, Riel. It's been so interesting listening to all these reflections on art and climate action and the need for connectedness, not just between humans, but with other species and life-giving things. By putting together this Earthvism Virtual Exhibit, we're doing more than highlighting the role of art in climate action. We also wish to honor art and the artists themselves. And beyond this, the things our artists have said so far made us think of the things we humans commonly honor: grand spectacles or displays, hierarchies, personalities. What if flipping this perspective is part of the change that needs to happen? Here's some food for thought from award-winning journalist and novelist Criselda Yabes. She said, and I quote, "I happen to think that our seas, the corals that we have, our underwater is like our museum. When you travel to other countries, you always see what they have in their museums. We don't have that. We have very limited things to show about our history and our heritage and our patrimony because we destroy them." Close quote. We just love the idea that our seas and our coral reefs could be our museum, even our national museum. But are we honoring that heritage? To hear the rest of this conversation with Criselda Yabes, look for her episode in Agam the Climate Podcast on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. And now, back to our artists tackling climate change through their work. Hi, Alia. Thank you for being with us this evening, and everybody watching, our fellow climate reality leaders and other young artists and creative people.
Hello everyone, I'm Alia. I'm 19 years old and I'm currently a communication arts student at UST, and I was trained in the July 2020 virtual global training for the Climate Reality Project. And I just want to add that I find that I just got recently into this advocacy of climate change and the climate crisis more actively, but I feel like I was kind of involved in it since 2018 or 2019. And as for like my art experience, I wouldn't say that I've had any sort of formal training, but I've had art classes throughout elementary and high school. And during high school, in my grade 11 and 12, I took a specialized art class because we were allowed to choose our own subjects. So I took visual arts as one of my subjects. So yeah, but for the most part, I feel like I developed art skills or my taste in art independently and at my own pace.
Nice, nice. So in some way, you're also training yourself, no? Aside from the
Yeah.
classes that you've taken before. And you mentioned that although you were trained as a climate reality leader last year, you were already involved in climate action about 2 or 3 years back. How did you get into climate action?
I think ever since I was young, I I feel like I grew up in a family that appreciated nature and just had an inclination to it, because during my summers I always went to our province in southern Leyte in Malitbog, and it's like a province, like no high-rise buildings or anything, and you're just surrounded by a lot of trees and all these greens. And so I spent a lot of my time outdoors, and during our like family vacations we traveled to a lot of the areas in the Philippines. And Philippines is known for its ecotourism, so I feel like I just grew to love it, and you protect what you love. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I was drawn into this advocacy.
That's true, and that's so important. The more we love something or care about something, the more we want to protect it, and that's a very deep
Mm-hmm.
reason to get involved in climate work. And your painting shows us coral, and it also shows us that it's created by someone who's, I think, had a close look at coral. Is that right?
Actually, I haven't gone diving or really explored the ocean a lot, but I do love the beach. So I've spent like ample amount of time in the water, but I've never done diving. So how I was able to paint the coral was just through a lot of research and looking through Google for copious amounts of examples. And uh, actually also through making this artwork, I was able to learn a little bit about the different types of corals. Um, I actually painted this not too long ago, around January. So yeah.
I like that. No, I like how you were able to give us a close look at coral without having been up close with coral yourself. That's really interesting that you were able to draw on other resources like Google and what's available on the internet, and through research you were able to draw a very detailed piece of coral. And the title of your work is Life by Coral. Could you tell us a little more about it? What were you sensing when you were creating this painting?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that this artwork was inspired by an article that I read in one of this newsletter that I subscribe to, which is from The Grist, and it's entitled "I'm Not a Fish. Why Should Coral Reefs Matter to Me?" So that really prompted me when I initially read it, and I saved that article from that newsletter because I felt that it really prompted me, and it's something that people fail to understand, like the interconnectedness of the interconnected nature of the climate crisis, and how even though some things like below sea level, um, it also affects people here above sea level. And they talked about how corals um, provide a sense of they provide food security, and they're also a source of income for people, especially in those living in coastal communities or like the coastal areas. And so it's really important for them. But there's also other people around the world who aren't living in coastal areas or in coastal communities, and they affect the corals because of the carbon intensive human activities that have, driven increased the temperatures in the oceans, and this has caused coral bleaching, and the high sea temperatures also affects the pH levels of the ocean, which causes an imbalance in their environment. So it causes them to die overall. And although although some people aren't directly affected, I mean, there's a lot of people that may not be directly affected. It's important to recognize that there will be people that are gonna bear the brunt of the consequences. And so that's why we need to realize the importance of corals. That's why I called it Life by Corals. And we need to protect the reefs and corals and the abundance that it brings people across the world. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Alia. I was saying it's so amazing how all of that thought and research and all the things you just told us can be expressed or put into an artwork like yours. Now imagine if your artwork was in a museum, hanging in a museum or a gallery, what would you want people to feel when they're looking at it?
So the emotions, or what I would like someone to feel, is that this juxtaposition of emotions, or these contrasting emotions, because how the artwork is divided into two, I aim to provide these different or contrasting perspectives. So on the left, we have this very vibrant side, and it kind of radiates optimism and positive feelings or emotions, and it's lively. And whereas on the right, we have this bleak and dull color scheme, and it's just the opposite of what abundance would feel like for me. So I can't describe this artwork in the emotions this artwork brings in one word, because of the contrasting sides and its juxtaposition that I provide. And overall, there's also this sense of movement, or this sense of motion created with the geometric patterns in the background. And I feel like I did that to allow the viewers' eyes to really look at the artwork from top to bottom, left to right, and really explore the whole space. So I think that successfully allowed me to get that sort of reaction, that reaction from the viewers.
Thank you, Alia. And what about you yourself? You just told us a lot of things that are going through your mind in relation to coral and your artwork. What were you feeling when you were working on this painting?
Firstly, I felt this sense of like power while making this, because I think it's an important message to share to people, or to share to an audience. So I felt a sense of power, or like hope, that I think I'm doing something good by painting this piece and expressing these emotions and this information or knowledge that I know to the public. So yeah, I had that sense of power and hope, and yeah, I think that's all. And during my painting process, I really tried to imagine myself in like near an ocean, or like by the beach, even though I'm here at home in the city. And at times it can be sort of loud and not really the most like pleasant thing to be around or in 24/7. So I think it also brought me a sense of calmness while painting it, because I thought of the ocean and the beach, and it's just always a nice experience or a pleasant experience there.
Thank you, Alia. And I think we'll end with that on that note. That sense of power that creating an artwork gives you, and a sense of hope that it also gives other people that are doing this very important work like yours. Thank you so much. Hi, good evening again, and welcome back to Earthvism, a virtual exhibit for Earth Day. Kasama ko ngayon si Vanessa Carantes, and she's currently in Baguio, and it's so nice that she can join us. Hi Vanessa, kumusta?
Hello po, okay lang po.
Malamig ba dyan ngayon?
Medyo po.
Maulan? Hindi pa.
Umuulan po ngayon.
Wow, okay. Nakakamiss din yung ulan sa Baguio, no? Kakaiba kasi siya. So, Vanessa, paki-introduce mo sarili mo sa mga nakikinig ngayon at nanonood ngayon. Isa kang climate reality leader. Ano pa?
Ako po ay isang nag-work po ako dati sa cruise ship due to pandemic. Napabalik po ako dito. So, I'm working as a assistant to my mom. Tapos, I am a freelance photographer and hobbyist artist lang po. And as now, tinutulungan ko po sila dun sa organization po namin Panatya, which is co-founded by my mom and some of my aunt po. And right now, tumutulong din po kami sa helping the youth po to know the culture of Benguet because nakakalimutan na po rin kasi. Yun po. And also, I am a chef po. Yun.
Ah, wow. So you're a chef and a cultural worker.
Yes po.
Ang ganda. So yung organization na binanggit mo ng mama mo and other friends and relatives is the one that's working to teach young people about the culture of Benguet?
Yes po.
Okay. So, tamang-tama yung painting na binigay mo para dito sa Earthvism Virtual Exhibit, ay may makikita talaga tayo tungkol sa Benguet culture sa painting na to. Yung pamagat niya ay salaw, tama?
Yes po.
Anong ibig sabihin nun?
Ay, yung salaw po kasi, na-inspired po yun sa my late grandma po, who is an Ibaloy po. Volunteer din po siya sa organization nila. Ngayon, dito sa Baguio po, na on-join ng Ibadoy. So, she died last 2 years po. Yung salaw is, dun po namin ginagawa yung rice wine or tinatawag namin tape. Yun po. Dun po na-inspired ko yung name niya na salaw because she's very active po. Doon kung may nangyayaring mga event, nandoon po siya. Doon ko po nakasaaral din sa kanyang mga culture namin. So yung different colors po niya, yung red, black, then yung ibang color doon ng mga divit o yung mga ginagamit ng ibang tribe ng Benguet, doon yung nandoon po sa background niya. Then yung circle po, yun yung gong na ginagamit nila during the event po.
Tapos yung hawak niya, yun yung salaw, no? So,
Yes,
tama
ma'am.
ba?
Yes
Yun
po,
yung,
ma'am.
so parang ano siya, banga or earthen pot, tapos dun dinalagay yung rice para
Rice
sa
wine po.
tapoy. Oo.
Yes po.
So yung lola mo, anong pangalan niya?
Si Josephine Candelario po. Siya po yung nagturo sa amin regarding sa cultures. Different cultures po, not just sa Ibaloy, dun sa iba rin pong tribe.
Okay. Tapos siya yung gumagawa siya ng tapoy noon, ng rice wine.
Yes po.
Sabi nila may ano daw yun eh, hindi lahat ng tao may kamay para sa rice wine. Tama, totoo ba yun?
Opo. Opo, ma'am. Meron po kasi yung nag-aagawa nila. Hindi yung may yung mas masarap, may yung hinahanap nila. Yung iba yung lasa po.
Nasubukan mo nang gumawa?
Hindi po.
Ayun, sige. So, yung suot niya is yung divit ng mga ibaloy, tama?
Yes po, divit po ng mother ko. Kasi wala siyang divit. So, pinahiram po nung mother ko. Kasi noon, yung tungkol naman po sa divit, meron kasi yung mga klase niyang divit. Noon, yung according to my mom and dun sa auntie ko po, mga taga Ikaraw tribe, may iba't ibang klase ng divit. Doon yung may matataas, mabababa, depending sa color po niya. Noon. Pero ngayon, kahit anong kulay na po ng divit, pwede pong isuot. Hindi kagaya noon, pag may kaya ka, may color coding po sila.
I see. Okay. So, yun pala yung ibig sabihin ng color coding.
Opo. Pati po sa ibang tribe po.
Okay. Oo. So, kung may kaya, ibig sabihin kung may lupa, may baka, tama
Opo.
ba?
Opo, may yung sa bahay po nila, ganun po noon.
Oo.
Pero ngayon hindi na po.
Oo. Ngayon kahit ano na?
Opo, tapos yung may mga different colors na sila, yung green, meron yung yellow and black, sa mga ifugaw po, ganun po.
Oo. Tamang-tama yun kasi yung gusto kong tanungin is yung detalye nga na pinili mo para sa painting na to. So, thank you dun sa description mo na gangsa pala yung center, yung nandun sa center. Tapos
Yes,
yung
po.
salaw ay yung hawak niya, tsaka yung mga colors and stripes around the woman. Tapos bakit ito yung napili mo na work para sa Earthvism?
Kasi po, sa Artivism po, kasi as indigenous people po, maraming ang indigenous people po kasi sila yung nag-preserve ng mga environment dito po sa atin po. Yun po, kung wala po sila, siguro, hanggang ngayon, hindi po tayo nandito. And right now, like yung nangyayari dito sa Benguet po, yung Baguio, we're losing the environment kasi yung dumadami na yung mga buildings and nababaliwala pa yung mga ibang indigenous people na gustong mag-preserve ng mga naiwan po para sa mga youth po. Yun po yung which is we are very active po ngayon, no? To preserve and to i-share ang mga culture ng mga indigenous people po dito sa Benguet. Yun po.
Salamat dyan. Tsaka napakahalaga niyan kasi kung minsan, pag sinabi natin climate crisis, parang ang laki-laki, di ba? Pero napaka-importante din kapag grounded yung trabaho sa isang lugar at may pagmamahal para sa isang lugar. Tapos meron yung connection na dinescribe mo sa Baguio, sa Benguet. Napaka-importante din nun sa ginagawa natin bilang mga climate reality leader at para sa climate action, di ba?
Yes po.
Yes. So, balik tayo sa painting mo. Ang ganda niya. Tapos, may headband siya na suot dito. Ano yun?
Opo, may different kinds po tayo ng headband. Yung sa kanya po kasi, yung gamit niya na yun. Kasi yung grandma ko po, hindi siya yung mambunong. Meron, siya, madmad. Ibig sabihin, magaling siya sa prayer, madmad. Kapag yung mambunong, meron mas malaking trabaho po yun sa kanya. So, yung gamit niya po na yung band, yun po yung sa ginagamit nila pag nagdadasal po sila sa offering po. So, tapos yung isa po, which is yung gamit ni tita ko dito, yun po yung white. Then dito, yun yung nilalagay nila dito pag nagke-carry sila ng kayabang, yung pagagaling mo lang sa farm po. Yun. Kasi masakit po dito yung pag sinabit mo yung sa may basket po. Yun yung ginagamit po nila.
Lalo na pag mabigat na yung laman ng basket, masakit siguro yun dito, no?
Opo,
Noon.
na-try ko po.
Talaga?
Yes po.
Anong laman ng basket nung tinry mo?
Yun, nilagay po ng lola ko po yung saging po.
Baka pati sa leeg siguro na-imagine ko masakit din.
Yes po, masakit din po.
Ayun. Patingin ulit ng picture kasi nabanggit mo yung kayabang, nandun rin
Yes
sa
po.
picture. So, ayan, yung basket na nasa likod.
Ito po, sa likod po. Yan po. Ito po, sa Itogon po ito.
Thank you. Hi, good evening everyone, and good morning to our next guest. Her name is Diana, and she's all the way in New York. Hi, Diana. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, hello. How are you?
I'm good, and you? How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great, great. So, you're here because you're part of the Earthvism Virtual Exhibit, and you sent in a beautiful oil painting, if I'm not mistaken, of an
I use acrylic.
acrylic. Okay, thanks for that. Of an anthurium. But before we get into that, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Of course. My name is Diana Grace Manalastas, and I'm a self-taught artist. I use discarded materials and I make them into art through mixed media and a fusion of sculpture and painting. I try to manipulate and reimagine used objects that have been already discarded or thrown away, and try to give birth to, try to give it like a new life, like completely something new.
Nice, that's great. And I'm looking at your painting now, the anthurium. Could you tell us a little about this painting?
Yes, I'm glad that you picked that. I'm glad you picked that specific art piece, because that came from my everlasting series of artwork, and that's my mother's favorite flower. She passed away when I was 3, and I created the everlasting series because it is my way of confronting impermanence. Before, when I visited my mom's grave, I made this because my father died when I 2 years ago. So I made these before then. So before, when I visited my mom's grave, I would think of flowers that would never wilt. That's why I came out with these collection. And recently, when my father passed away, I made sculptures, and it's there. I made sure that they have flowers that will not wilt.
That's lovely. So flowers that will stay with them.
Yeah, these are
with
made.
you.
That specific art piece is made from wires. From wires that I picked up. If you look closely, they're all wires.
Oh, okay. So let's get more into the detail of the painting. So it's wires.
That I picked up everywhere, from like electronic parts that have been thrown away, from cables. I just picked them up and used them.
Right. And then how did you put them on the canvas, or is it a board and you painted over them?
That one is on I believe I picked up most of the time it's 100% recycled, even the canvas. I pick up a something that's thrown out, like a plywood or plastic, and then use it as my canvas.
Great, great. And you mentioned earlier that you really try to work with recycled material or discarded material, and you give them another life. So you, in creating your artwork, you're recycling things yourself, and
100%.
that's
All of
excellent.
them.
Amazing. Can you show us another example of this kind of work?
Yes. Just a sec. Actually, I have a favorite because I believe that I'm the only one. This belongs in my Everlasting series as well. Do you know those paint bucket covers, the 5-gallon ones?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done is I've used the covers, and
Nice.
so it gives an illusion that it's framed, but it's not. And then at the
Yeah.
same time, it's ready to hang.
Oh, great. And
So this it's a road.
It's not flat.
It's not, because I do sculpture. Yeah, so most of my works are in 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional.
That's great.
Yes.
You.
So
Thanks
and
for
then the
sharing
flower, so I remember making this. It was during election, and then I was picking up. They were throwing away those tarpaulins from election, because the election's finished. So I was picking them up and used them, and these are those.
Nice, nice. I like how picking up discarded stuff is part of your practice. There was one you showed me really quickly earlier that I like.
This one, this have been exhibited twice here in New York, one at the Philippine Consulate, and then one very recently, this January. It's here in New York too. Different Juan Pablo Duarte Foundation sponsored me, and if you look closely, these are all plastic. Where I've used those plastic clips that for the loaves of bread, that seals the loaves of bread. And a friend of mine was so interested in these that she had actually looked up what they called. So I finally found out what they're called. It's occluplanids.
Wow.
It actually has a term. Who knew that? Yes, so those are occluplanids. And when I put them together, I wanted to call them occluplanets.
Okay, thanks for sharing that with us. And thank you also for participating in Earthvism. It's a pleasure seeing your work and seeing how you're able to remake stuff. And one more thing you were going to share with us, you were going to show us how to transform trash or something that most people see as trash into a piece of art.
Yes. So I've decided to do a base, but I'm not sure if you can see it, but be able to show it. It's a soda can.
So before this stage, ano muna yung ginawa mo?
Oh, I just put a base. So that I put a base. I crushed it first.
Okay. Yeah.
So it looked like this, and then I crushed it, and then I put a base so that the paint will stay. And then so that it covers all the prints on it. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to try to make this quick. Oh, yeah. Because I don't want to, ayoko kasing madumihan yung tablet then. But anyway, I'll try to make this very quick. And this is something that I like to do because kids can make it.
Right.
Like as if they needed to do a project in school that's recycled, this is something that very easy to make. They can. I just like making apples, but they can make it with any fruit that you can buy it on, basically. But I just like making apples. It's nice to give to teachers.
Yeah. I
As
was just
gift.
thinking that this is a great
Yeah.
activity for kids.
Yeah.
Ah, here's the red.
Right?
I'm starting to
Is
see
it
it.
starting to show?
I see the apple.
Yeah. So if you put, ang kulang na lang dito na hindi ko malalagay yung buto. But,
Yeah, oo. Black na lang, no? Just, nice. That's so
is it
fun.
an apple?
Uh-huh. Yep. Great.
From a soda can.
Take a bite out of it.
So there you go. That's
Thank
my
you.
apple core soda can. And usually what I do para meron siyang use, ito pinifill ko ng plaster of Paris, bibigat siya. Becomes a
paperweight. Galing. Okay, thank you so much, Diana. That's fun. Thank you. Hi everyone, we are now joined by Jess Lim, and her work is quite different from the others. So I can't wait for you to hear from her about her work. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening on this Earthvism Virtual Exhibit. Hi, Jess.
Hi, Padma. Good evening. Thank you for the invite and this opportunity. I am just so glad to be a part of this amazing event.
And we are glad you're here. So, Jess, could you introduce yourself to our viewers who are joining us tonight?
Yes, so my name is Rtn Marie. I am the founder and design director of FRND Architectural Studio and co-founded Reefs. So I am a practicing architect and an environmental planner that focuses in passive and biophilic design strategies towards sustainability. And I also enjoy making inspirational and informative creative media and anything related to visual arts.
Wow, you mentioned passive passive design or architecture. Did I hear that correctly? What's that?
Yeah. So passive because most of the time you hear people, we're sustainable or green building, but most of the time they still place air cons and artificial lighting and anything artificial. I don't like that. So passive means just using all the natural lighting, daylighting, and natural ventilation. So just copying nature, actually.
Wow, listening to you, I realized this is what you're trying to show us in your work that we're looking at this evening. So it's the Urban Green Village, and you also mentioned that it's pandemic architecture. So could you tell us more?
Yeah, so actually last year when the pandemic hits, there were lots of design competitions sprouting everywhere. So we joined and used the competition guidelines to create our dream project. So we were looking at sustainable communities, how sustainable communities work, because I never felt welcome or happy or safe in my own city. So we created a utopian village where we dubbed as the Urban Green Movement. That's this village.
So can you tell us more about this dream village? It looks to me like a really nice space to live. There's lots of green space and natural light everywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, please tell us more.
Okay, so sorry, you want me to like discuss everything about it?
Maybe we choose one. Do you have a favorite panel that you really like?
Okay, maybe yeah, maybe I can discuss the panel. I mean the grid on where the chapel is shown.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. Okay. So that,
Okay.
as I have mentioned, because there are already available guidelines on how sustainable communities work, right? And then we found out there are eight of them, and of course, as a religious country, we thought that why is spiritual not included here? Because I think this environmental crisis is beyond our control, and it needs divine divine intervention. So we thought that when we have our faith, if we have God as the center of it all, I think people will be just guided all throughout, the having a strong faith. I think people would just cooperate anything that that makes the world go round, I think. So yeah, actually there's so many technical things I would want to share, but I just want to point this out, the religious, the spiritual criterion we've added, because I think in the end of our life, the ultimate reward is with him anyway. So that's what we've always, how can I say this? It's always been our driving force to do better works, like just to glorify his name, everything we do.
And this is a really beautiful chapel in this panel that we're looking at now.
Yeah, it's just opened, and just because during the pandemic, like everyone was trapped in their own four-walled spaces. So I love opening my windows, and where I live, I'm happy to see trees around and hear the birds singing while I work. So I thought that everyone should have the right to listen to the birds singing. It's in our Philippine Constitution, right? So, and the concrete jungle is really not helping us. So that's why it's very ironic. As an architect, I prefer being with the natural environment.
I love how you weave together spirituality and faith and the gift of having trees nearby and of hearing bird song. And I completely agree with you. And also, I just can't imagine what it would be like if we lived in a world where we can't hear birds anymore.
Yeah.
I think it would be horrible to allow that to happen.
Definitely. I wouldn't want to live in that world. It's crazy without birds.
Yeah. And so the openness of the chapel and of the space, just the space in all your panels and in this one in particular, there's always birds, I noticed.
Yeah, there are birds everywhere there.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And So as an architect, if I could ask, what
Mhm.
what role does art and the climate and climate change, how is it shaping your work, but also architecture in general, the practice?
Okay. I think the role. Okay, let's say, because architecture and art, it's really like the lines are blurry in between. So for me, art and architecture really plays an enormous role in climate crisis, because any problem should be solved creatively, and anything that taps creative is an art form. So yeah, I think that's just it.
I love that.
Everything should be, yeah, I think what we need now is creative minds, like whether you're an architect, a lawyer, or an HR, whatever your role is, everything should be integrated with art.
I love
Yeah.
that. I agree. Of course, I agree.
Yeah.
And how about architecture as a profession? The climate is changing.
Mm-hmm.
We have a climate crisis upon us. Do you see architecture changing and the way people do the work of architecture?
Right now, I don't see much, but I am still hopeful. I am very optimistic that the private sectors and the government will push a healthier, nature-loving development and projects that are self-sustaining. Because green architecture, actually, it's 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 quite hard to 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 make it real here, most especially for me. I'm really struggling doing green architecture, like 100% green, because when you say green architecture, you have to have green materials, and it's so hard to find green materials without greenwashing them. There's so many say let's say, I can't even give an example because it's just so hard to find, most especially here in my city. It's hard to find green materials. That's why in our practice, we always opt doing passive design, just making use of what's already there, what nature has given us, the daylighting and the ventilation. I don't like AC, honestly. I'd prefer opening all of my windows and just feel the breeze. And I don't know where there's just so much in my mind. I don't know what to
May I ask
say
what
or share,
city
but
you live in?
oh, I'm in Cebu City.
I see.
Yeah, so
go ahead, sorry.
So where was I? Yeah, there's so much I want to say, but I don't know where to start and even end it. But I think architects and designers should really take a look at how nature works and just be inspired how it is, how the natural world sustain itself, because how we are, we're creating, like, the things that we consume are just widely inappropriate. So okay, what was your question again?
Okay. No, it's fine. You answered it already. Yeah, I asked how architecture is changing along with climate change and the climate crisis, and I think you answered it really well. You gave us concrete examples, and And yeah, Jess, I hope that in the near future, you'll be joined by more young architects with the same perspectives or who share your hopes and your dreams and your work ethic that really
It's hard to find them, no?
Yeah, I hope there'll be more. I really do hope there'll be more
I hope so too.
Joining forces with you and with others. So thank you. Okay, so now we have something fun for all our artists this evening. We have a quick sketch prompt for you. And you all have your paper and your pens ready. You have 60 seconds to do this sketch, and here's the prompt. If you were a non-human species, such as any animal or any plant or a non-human thing in the environment and in nature, what would you be? Draw that. You have 60 seconds. Last few seconds. And time is up. That was such a rich and illuminating discussion with our artists and their provocative works. Again, thank you so much for sharing your work and time with us and giving us a glimpse of your creative process, your inspiration, and the messages you would like to convey. Your work and commitment give rise to hope despite the harsh reality of our climate crisis. I'm sure many of those who tuned in were inspired and perhaps also motivated to believe in their own capacity to express themselves, be creative, and take action for our country, planet, and collective futures. To see more reimaginings of climate conversations through stories and art, visit the Agam Agenda on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And to hear more conversations like this, follow Agam the Climate Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the Climate Reality Project Philippines and the Agam Agenda, we thank you for joining us tonight for Earthvism Virtual Exhibit. This has been Padma Perez. Happy Earth Day every day. Good night.